Hello, my name is Jeremiah Lynn. Welcome to my one-person show. I first decided I wanted to write a one-person show when I realized how much money I could save. Later, it also seemed like a reasonable means of projecting a clarified artistic vision. I started working on the script in the spring of 2018. I wrote a book called Jeremiah Lynn for Everything that contained an esoteric combination of my research, personal reflections, and lunatic plans. Reading it is probably the literary equivalent of taking drugs in the wrong setting, like doing LSD at a truck stop or shooting smack at Christmas. To be clear, I don't ask for forgiveness for my art. It is what it is, in this, a place and a time far weirder than one could have ever speculated. This is a charity production, and all proceeds will be donated to the International Rescue Committee, who provides direct aid to victims of humanitarian crises. Founded at the call of Albert Einstein in 1933, the IRC is rated over 90% on Charity Navigator, and I encourage you to support them beyond this production, as I also hope to do. I'm going to do my level best to guide the tiller of this play away from the craggy rocks of artistic masturbation and towards the far shores of communal enlightenment. But no matter what the end result, we are at least helping children struggling as victims of our global failures. With all that in mind, the first thing I want to talk about is family, and how you are all my family. Consider, then, our long history on this earth. I am a scientist, but also a pantheist, and also a lunatic, and so there are many things to consider in evaluating the history of our people. Of all the creation stories, I prefer science the best, because it is, I think, the most miraculous of all. One of the more popular creation stories suggests that the universe was created in 6 days. Hell, I can't create a reasonable sandwich without less than 2 weeks. People like to make excuses for this time frame, explaining that weeks work differently in God time, but they are just that, excuses. We are life clinging to a spinning ball of space rock, people. You can rationalize it with whatever voodoo or hoodoo you need to cling to, but it's more than likely that every living thing on this planet evolved from a chemical partnership undertaken in the tidal pools of primordial ooze. It could very well be that we are, all of us, deviant mutations from but a single cell, a single impossible cell that made itself and continued to do so, against all odds, beyond all reason. One cell from which was created the house cat and the tiger shark, David Bowie and longhorn cattle. We humans consider ourselves the only sentient, intelligent life on the planet, but that is largely an excuse to be able to eat the other things. To be fair, everything would be getting eaten without our intervention. But there again, we eat some weird stuff, kids. Weird, awful stuff. We, you and me, and everyone who could or would ever hear or see this are all a family. We began as a single population in East Africa and spread out from there. We know this because we are all 99% genetically identical. The Toba eruption destroyed human life down to millions, to as little as 2,000, some scientists have suggested. Possibly even less, possibly as few as 700. The genetic bottleneck. Think about being in a room of 700 people. It's like a slow rodeo. Even 2,000 is still a college graduation crowd. From these hundreds of people scattered over Africa, Europe, and Asia, we are all related. Everyone who has existed since from these survivors, this family. Humanity is a civilization, but it is also the biggest, most effed up family conceivable. Even so, we are related. It doesn't matter if you live in China or Bemidji. We're all made of the same stuff. The only reason we happen to look a certain way while being from a certain place is due to geographic isolation. There is no magical racial division. Race was conceived by bad scientists trying to please their slave-owning benefactors. Well, I'm done playing that game. There is no time left to spend dividing us. We are all spinning out of control on a burning marble. We are all pooping brass on the Titanic. We are all eating more mercury than a 17th century hatter and getting crazier by the hour. We are unwilling participants in the greatest age of technology and discovery. You are pioneers into the age of global communication, whether you want to be or not. Welcome to the future. As the sun sets on this side of the planet, it rises on the other, where other humans are clocking in to make our phones and spacecraft. If and when they rest, we will take over once again. It's tiring, but it is what it is. A while ago, I wrote the first third of this play in an entirely different way. For one thing, I gave myself a lot of breaks to drink water and walk around my desk. Also, it was probably much better. Maybe not. How can one speculate on oneself? Truly. But, while keeping in this same sort of absurdist, humanist, cosmopolitan theme, it was probably the single greatest piece of drama ever crafted. My daughter, Victoria Elizabeth Lynn Baker, deleted that third of the play. Technically, she moved it to the recycle bin without me noticing, and I deleted it. So it is gone forever. An attempt to recover the file yielded a corrupt file. Such is life in the 21st century. Shoulda, coulda, woulda used the cloud. In a game of life, in real's life save points are few, and with this IRL save I met with critical failure. Alas, alack, what is a dramatist to do but to start over? And here we are, building tragicomedy again, in a vain but inevitably hilarious commentary on the ultimate meaning of life, art, and faith. Throw some poop humor in there. Try not to get pink eye. Ruth says that I write in fragments, and she's right, but I also think in fragments. So what is an artist to do? Writing is hard, under the best of circumstances. The 21st century is in no way the best of circumstances. For reals, though, writing is super hard, virtually impossible for most people. If everyone could write compelling literature for a lucrative living, they would of course do that. But hardly anyone can write anything compelling, and those that do generally struggle to achieve financial success. Oh, Stephen King, sure. But for every Stephen King, there are 1,000 Jeremiah Linns bleeding over the keyboard for decades for little more than kind feedback. That's really all a writer should want or expect by putting pen to paper or electron to screen. The feedback doesn't even have to be good to be kind. It really wasn't something I liked, but it was certainly long. Bingo. All net. 3 points. But what normally happens is the existential equivalent to getting kicked by a horse in the face. The sort of wanton mental havoc that comes from sudden impacts followed by months of recuperation. The $6 annual check for your book sales, for instance. At least it isn't enough to report. No tax impact there. Further frustrating matters have occurred recently, notably the rise of QAnon, a loose confederacy of internet dunces, desperate for structure in our churning chaos. They follow the encrypted predictions of an internet entity known as Q, which would all be great, had I not firmly established my own alter ego super agent superhero of the same name some time ago. Q, who is Quaddle, who is Quetzalcoatl, who swallowed Quetzalcoatl, is not QAnon, no. We have entered an age of false Qs, to be certain. There I was, a comfortable distance away from the relevance of James Bond and Star Trek The Next Generation, place-setting a Q of my own in literature by publishing the Book of Q September 11th, 2011. It isn't a perfect novel, certainly. It was written over the course of several years, incorporating a perpetual alternative universe. Among the weird shit that happens, Trump gets nuked by Guy Mancock, lizard people save Seattle, and all life on Earth is almost entirely eradicated by, among other things, a fascist space force, Tom Cruise, and an undead robot. These are the things that are supposed to happen 300 or so years from now. It was and is a work centered in futurism, socio-political sustainability, and lasers. It was a work of psychic therapy that purged my impotent rage and loss, turning it into hope and promise. The promise I made then, and try to continue every day, is to save this world. It is not easy work, nor rewarding. If I succeed, then we will survive the inevitable collapse of society, economy, and the environment. If I fail, then we are all relegated to the fossil record. Let the cockroach people enjoy what we could not. Let the creatures that don't like or need oxygen inherit the earth, and let this swan song then echo into eternity. Let it be known that we did not go quiet into that dark night. I fight to save the planet in the most boring possible way these days. I work for a wonderful solar company as an operations support specialist responsible for interconnection. Every day I connect clients to the electrical grid with the power of paperwork. We offset an average of 50 annual tons of carbon a day, virtually every day of the week. I work remotely from my home office, which is nice in many ways and difficult in others. I'd rather be using theater to save the world, which is what we're doing here, in theory. In the later half of graduate school, I took classes in project management and didn't do very well in them. But I learned a lot from them. Right off the bat, I learned about the difference between operations and projects. A project has a specific timeline and sequence of events that carry it from beginning to end. Operations are the unchanging daily tasks that are needed to run a business. When I read about it, I said, probably out loud, "That sounds awful, I would hate that." What I've learned is that the universe listens to us sometimes. It doesn't listen to our prayers, it doesn't listen to our pleas, but sometimes it listens to our proclamations and seeks to cause us pain because of them. Sometimes it hears something you say in a moment of desperation as a cruel joke, and the universe will take that joke seriously. Very seriously. So I've taken to avoid saying things on a casual basis. That is also why we're here. I'm going to dump all this nonsense into the universe and then crawl into a bunker for the rest of the year. I feel very lucky to have my job. The work is mundane, but I get to work every day with Andrew Clemens, who is a gorgeous sex god. and always has been. So we do it. The solar interconnection. We orchestrate the grand interconnection and curse the utilities for their shenanigans. Clemens lives in Ohio with his amazing family, and we both know how important our work is to trying to save the planet. I'm going to tell you all about how we are probably going to die. There are a lot of factors and models and science. The ocean is getting warmer and more acidic, and at some point when it becomes warm and acid enough, zooplankton and phytoplankton will go extinct. The water will make them unable to create the shells they require to survive, and first the ocean will lose oxygen and die, and then the atmosphere will lose oxygen and die. Oh, not everything will die. Plants will be fine. Better than fine with all the carbon flying around. We will not be. Humans, as well as every land animal that requires oxygen, will perish in an extinction-level event not seen since the dinosaurs. It will be as if the nitrogen got turned up at the dentist, I hope. With less oxygen in it, there will still be air. It simply will not have what it needs to keep us alive. We will get confused and stupid and sleepy and die in the billions. I've worked out a few ways to survive, but I'm only going to share at the very end, so you better just get comfortable. I will take some time after this spiel to let you stretch your legs and fiddle with your candy. Did I mention there isn't an intermission? Because there isn't. My goal is a tight hour and a half, and if you will all just sit there silently and obediently, we might even clear an hour 20. Why, you ask? Well, good question. Basically, it's about ensuring this piece is a qualified full length while also nestling into the niche of Hollywood timelines that have trained us to all enjoy pieces an hour and a half in length. The human mind only has so much time to focus on any one thing, and if there are a lot of things, all confusing and scary, well, let's just shoot for the hour and a half. We don't want to let those Pulitzer swine off too easy. I've developed what some may consider a toxic fixation on the Pulitzer Prize for Drama. For one thing, everything is toxic. A person can kill themselves by drinking too much water. With that said, Joseph Pulitzer sucks poops in hell, and I don't care who knows it. I thought you were going to drag me into hell once, Joe. Once. But it was only a train. A train after all. Well, your drama contest sucks. They don't even send you a 100-word feedback form. A thank you email. No, don't use electrons on that trash. We've got to keep saving for Lin-Manuel Miranda's next opus. You want to know when Miranda is going to write something better than Hamilton? The 21st of never. Put it on your calendar, kids. It's right next to where you can put my Pulitzer win. No, I pay the $50 to register for it, and I produce a DVD for it, and I mail 6 scripts to the office at Columbia, and they don't even consistently confirm they received it. They probably put on gloves to carry it to the trash. I bet they don't even open it most times. My postage coming from anywhere but Broadway puts it towards the bottom of the incinerate with extreme prejudice pile. The board does a bunch of blow and everyone talks about Hamilton and then give it to whoever has the money to get on Broadway. At least Portland is getting into the game, keeping the game weird enough to risk doing a one-night-only global premiere in Turtle River just to stay in the goddamn game. It's only $150 or so in registration, printing, envelopes, and postage. Oh, then there's the thousands of dollars I lose putting on the plays. But fuck that, you know? Fuck that noise. Say it again for the kids in the back. I often wonder about the greatest artists and where they were in life when they were creating things. Like, did Leonardo da Vinci step back from the Mona Lisa and go, "Bullshit!" and throw his brush to the ground and cry? Or is that just me? Surely not. Many far more talented writers have killed themselves, or are otherwise already dead. Then there are the millions of artists currently living. But then you have to consider that actual dramatists are a dying profession of extinct creative training in a fragmented marketplace. And then you have to consider that continuing to invest yourself into this collapsing star may generate negative impacts. Ongoing negative impacts. So we trim it down, reduce costs. When you look at the entire realm of production possibilities, a one-night-only one-person show that receives at least one press announcement is the absolute minimum requirement. So to you, dear reader, not you, the audience in attendance, if you happen to be on the board for the Pulitzer Prize for Drama 2020, I have your entire family trapped in a storage container underwater. Just give me the prize, and I will give you the location and where to find the keys to the padlock. We will forgive and forget these past grudges, and I will start trying to beat Eugene O'Neill. Old dead Eugene O'Neill, who would have gotten more than 4 if not for the chronic alcoholism. Albie was your ringer, but that crusty fuck took his eyes off the prize. Well, enjoy, if you can. I wrote a book called Jeremiah Lin for Everything, and if I were lazy, I would just read it to you. But we would be here for a while. Probably a lot longer than an hour and a half. The thing is, that would also probably be super boring, because I write things differently for people to read than for people to see or hear. Then there's the consideration of the formatting and the transmission of information. With any luck, I'll have copies here, if I get my ducks in rows, to murder and eat them. That's what getting ducks in rows means, to execute them and eat them. Or maybe to herd them to places they eat bugs. I could look it up, but I'm not going to. See, isn't this so much better than me reading a boring book? Rather, I would like to think of this piece as something of an apology for the book, and also a shameless plug for it. Because Stephen King I'm not. But there is and has only ever been one Jeremiah Lin. Lots of kings in the phone book. Bible too. But we have Jeremiah coverage there as well. I went this long time not knowing what happened to the prophet Jeremiah, and then I read he was stoned to death by his own people in Egypt. So if I can avoid that, I'm already more successful than the nearest Judeo-Christian cultural icon. Some of you may be thinking about Jeremiah Johnson, who killed people and ate their livers, but don't. Unless it's that film with Robert Redford. Then you are allowed. But just during the time it takes to drink some water. I'm not even going to waste time on stage directions for that. This is going to be one of the densest scripts in known history, if nothing else. High school kids doing monologues in schools you can say fuck in are going to have a field day. I kid. No one will ever do this play. That's the other great relief in this model of production, because I know it's not being butchered by some repertoire in Alabama or something. I'm not against pole barn theater in general, but there is a specific brand of unsustainable, non-professional performance art that I am against. I speak, of course, of the Grand Ole Opry. We're picking all sorts of pointless fights with this piece. We are calling that now. Hee-haw! We come for you. If you want to watch a show where the boy meets the girl, but things are challenging in the world and they can't be together, but then unlikely circumstances allow them to come together and be happy forever, watch some Disney. I'm not here to spoon-feed you. I am here to awaken you. I am here to revive you. I am here to inspire your courage and bolster your spirit. I cannot give you massages. They took my license away. Those monsters. My friend Jesse Whiting once famously said, I'm a monster with player levels, and I believed it. I believe it still. That man is a total monster, if you're a pizza. A lot of you probably don't know who Jesse Whiting is, and that's sad. His distant uncle, Frank M. Whiting, was an accomplished professor of theater at the University of Minnesota, who launched a Showboat summer program that eventually transitioned into the Centennial Showboat. That eventually transitioned into us, the BSG, attempting to manage the Showboat. That is an entire section of Jeremiah Lin for Everything, but I'm not going to go into it, except to say that we still don't have command of a Showboat. It was a damn fine plan, too. Worked in tandem to the semi-secret Unicellular Arts Shadow Organization. Who knows, you could save the planet with theater, but it would just be so hard. I did my master's research on how to do it, and that is another thing in the book, the Lind Art Sustainability Scale. It's a table of production factors that can be applied to establish a sustainability score that can be set as a goal and improved upon with planning. It breaks down 20 factors into environmental, social, and economic considerations, with a perfect score being a 60 and the worst possible score a negative 60. After creating the scale and applying it to a production, I can say that it isn't as easy as I thought it would be to get a perfect score. You basically need to produce a flawlessly sustainable original ballet, so I'm working on that, but it is very hard. This show will get a pretty great score in some ways and fail spectacularly in others. Ideally, a person could not only save the planet making theater, but also pay their bills, all while bettering society. That is the brass ring on our flaming carousel. But at this place in history, I am just holding on very tightly while working my angle of attack. The Lind Art Sustainability Score is called the LAS, and if your production lasts more than a year, you rescore every year to produce a LASSY, because acronyms are meant to be sassy. None of this can be considered research. I am riffing on research, but the actual research is sound. I have read many things, considered many factors, developed a structure and a method. If people were to buy into it, it could revolutionize the way we produce and share theater. But also, I may be more interested in creating a pressurized home in the event of mass apoxia. Unfortunately, my education is in this bullshit. So let's all do what we can, do what you're good at, do it for something good, and maybe we can synergize our way out of disaster. Because I truly feel we are just a few years away from functional immortality. That probably sounds crazy, but a scientist recently claimed the human lifespan will soon be 1,000. They didn't understand why that was so hard to believe. And without looking too deeply into it, I don't see why it's so unbelievable either. You print universally compatible organs and just keep replacing the bad ones. Things get really bad. We have a universal donor body, and we just zing your head off and attach it to that bad Larry, and you're good to go for another 100. Side effects may include total insanity. I'm keeping an eye on a doctor named Canavero who is arranging for the first human head transplant. He had a candidate lined up, but that fell through, so now he's working in China, as I understand. He believes that the sharpness of the knife was the primary factor preventing spinal tissue interconnection. I think it's probably going to take some graphene latticing or some other cool future stuff. But whatever the solution is, we are close to being unafraid of death and or disease. There are already cures for cancer. There is not a universal cure for cancer yet, but I know several people who have undergone treatment resulting in total remission and or elimination of the cancer. It is miraculous, but for the terrible monetary cost associated with it. The people who can afford the cancer treatment survive, and those who cannot do not. Survival based on crowdfunding. What a dystopian nightmare to so casually wander into our lives. Make no mistake, the social contract is a fantasy woven by social scientists to enslave you. There is no social contract. Capitalism consumes for profit until there is no more profit to be had. The apex predator in capitalist systems are the corporations. They represent the structures of wealth owned and managed by 1% of our population, to the tune of $280 trillion or so. In addition to inserting themselves into every possible moment of our waking lives, they are also responsible for 70% of total carbon emissions. Recycle all you want, but unless we raise every corporate structure to the ground tomorrow, probably we have until 2050 or so before we are beyond the point of total extinction. Right now, I'm wagering on the crazy mysticism of barely understood Mesoamerican consumer gods, because according to all scientific estimates, we are doomed in a half. Meanwhile, we could and should stop using fossil fuels tomorrow, localize electric bus and vehicle factory garages, create a functional electric flying car, use a clean grid to remove and convert atmospheric carbon into fuel with inert byproduct, create a genetic arc, get us off of this planet, just in case we do everything right, and then Wyoming explodes. We're not prepared for Wyoming exploding, nor are we prepared for a magnetic solar event. There was an incident where the sun threw some flares of magnetism at Earth, and at the time, telegraph wires exploded into flame and telegraph boxes exploded. It destroyed every electrical circuit in existence when these circuits were built to withstand a lot. Whatever side of the planet gets exposed to a subsequent event is going to be thrown back into the technological dark ages. It is the electromagnetic pulse from an atomic attack without any of the rapidly expanding hydrogen. Your phone, your car, your television, fried into nothingness. An emergency assessment claimed that responding to such an event, it would be at least 4 months to restore basic functions of the electrical grid. We are not prepared for that event, or Wyoming exploding, or a massive space object striking us at insane speeds. Dinosaured. All because we have not been given the tools to provide for ourselves. We are all the victims of mass piracy. The smartest thing pirates ever did was create governments. Why spend all that time looting and burying booty on the high seas when you can just declare yourself the sole ruler of a continent inhabited by people for the previous 20,000 years or so? You don't even need a boat, just a building with a flag over it and the ability to defend the area with violence up to and including genocide. Perhaps Wyoming should explode. But no, please don't. Let me tell you about Jeremiah Lin for everything. At first, it was a crazy political theory. I have a lot of crazy political theories, and I've experimented with a few to varying degrees of success. One that I never deployed was the idea of running as a write-in candidate for every eligible office in the nation. Residency would perhaps negate those results, but then a campaign promise would be to move to wherever asked for Jeremiah Lin the most. Maybe it's a distressed farming community in Idaho in desperate need of some swashbuckling musical skills. Maybe it's a rough-and-tumble coastal town in Louisiana recovering from the worst oil spill in recorded history in desperate need of security. Maybe it's a town that needs a mayor or a sheriff or a judge that isn't beholden to corporate interests and willing to go to where they're asked for most, forever searching for the election that would bring him home. Compelling episodic television, perhaps. But the reality of moving around the country based on a vote is chaotic at best. Also, residency restrictions make me ineligible for all but a handful of legitimate offices. Also, I've committed myself never to spend any money trying to be elected. This is because I believe our current political system has been poisoned by the love of money above all else. I also don't have very much money. On the books, I'm probably in the hole quite a bit. So I'm not going to spend money losing elections. Thank you. I don't think a person has to spend money to get their ideas out there. The concept of information virility is both familiar and yet undefined, but isn't always the product of an intention. It can come from anywhere and be any media, but some element of it allows it to spread through the zeitgeist of our age. Gather enough momentum, and any mold could be our planet's undoing. Heed these words, simple mind slaves. Later, the idea of Jeremiah Lin for everything came to me as the ultimate advocacy. Unilateral, universal, unitardinal advocacy. What do you do for a living? Sell batteries? Good for you. What do you do for work? You assemble circuit boards? Amazing. What do you do? You make tacos and taco salads for people? Fantastic. Let me eat those foods. When are you open? What do you like to do for fun? Eat mushrooms and read comics? What comics? What was it like growing up? You were blind for the first 5 years of your life? Tell me about that. What do you think this crazy thing called life is all about? 42? I read that book. Jeremiah Lin for everything means that everything is for you. It's all done for and by and to communicate with you, whoever you are. Whoever you weird fucking people are out there, with your cell phones and your mints, watching or reading this or listening wherever you are, all dozen or so between all these possible people. Christ on crack cocaine, I wish I could have focused more on math when I was in school. What a dumb regret. Here I am using cursive and simple math every day, just wishing I could have gotten enough XPs to build my solar dirigible. The arts. The fine arts, even. Liberal fine arts. There's chaotic, and then there's applied fine liberal arts. I'd considered a format, that first format, where in the first third of the play I would tell you who I was, and in the second I would tell you about my dreams, and in the third I would tell you about my plans. And I'm still attempting to achieve that goal, while also trimming down the overall length by omitting stage directions to move around my desk and drink water. And by doing that, I think we are now concluding this first third. But, and this is all relative, I suppose, what I just wrote may be insane word salad. The entire rambling prose may sound like incomprehensible insanity, and no single point or tangible value was or will be secured. I'm willing to take that risk at this point. My reputation isn't that spectacular, but my fans are all dyed-in-the-wool badasses, and my enemies are autocratic butt sniffers. So, what am I to lose in explaining to you all my ethos in a reasonably paced and sized live presentation? No intermission! I know you want to go to the bathroom and have a reluctant poop, but you can't, all right? Poop your pants if you must, but we are going to get through this show. Damn it. I'm a busy guy. I don't just do art. Art is my passion, not my vocation. I do this in order to have something to show for my time surviving these weird events. Moving forward into the ad hoc second act, I want you to keep in mind that most of this is probably free and on the internet. Of that, most of it will probably be watched by robots. So, robots, if you are listening, I need $500 trillion as soon as possible. As we transition into my dreams, I want to take that oversized $500 trillion check with us. I want to remind us that economy and society are entirely made-up systems. We make them up on the fly, and if they are strong enough and enforced with enough violence, they remain. What is unstable or weak falls. But the economy, for instance, is entirely made up. There is no gold standard. It's a made-up computerized figure on a system of servers. If tomorrow the stock market crashes, the contents of our wallets are useless. You can scrape your window with a robust enough credit card. You can chop up the last of the world's cocaine with them. Normal people don't know how to run society, and when those startled freaks all leap out of their windows, the entire thing grinds to a halt. Walmart Stores Incorporated. for all their corporo-fascist glory, wouldn't last 2 missed paychecks before outright revolt. They would line the Walton family against a wall and eat them one by one. Let the masses know what $140 billion in meat tastes like. I know there are those who say that will never happen, that people will rally together and share resources and overcome hardships through unity and strength. But that is some rose-colored bullshit, which typically means your bull is sick. Humanity, I love you, but you are the most dysfunctional family in known existence. All through the animal kingdom, you see examples of groups of animals working together to create amazing, incomparable, complex structures. Humans can build interesting structures, but they rarely cooperate to do it. They consume. Our hunger will be our undoing unless something is done. I dream that the world will unite. We are a broken conglomeration of nation-states created and divided by colonial and corporate interests to manage and control global production. You poison banana workers with antifungal agents to keep the shelves stocked. You let families dig in the mud for diamonds until they die. You let children dig underground for our phone batteries. You let slaves carry my chocolate. No more. No more to these crimes when a world united and empowered can see and prevent these atrocities. True global sustainability is only achievable through true global unity. It requires the dismantling of the nation-state as an arbitrating entity in global decision-making. The United Nations is not a functional global agency. Their programs and efforts have failed to deliver the solutions required to provide for a just planet. Their representation cannot enforce or prevent atrocity, taking only the safest of measures to acknowledge when these atrocities occur. These crimes against humanity occur everywhere, and no government is perfect in their delivery of safety from them. But to unify the globe, you need a person or group that can speak in every language and compel those who hear the message to action. To unify the globe would require a revolution the likes of which have never been conceived of, let alone witnessed. Our entire age is crazy pants, off-the-wall cuckoo. But the last century... I poop on humanity, sure, but we also can fly and transplant organs and make the deaf hear and the blind see. When we work together, there is no limit to which we can achieve. I have a few functional ways to create this sustainability, but the most comprehensive is the idea of a global union. A union in the traditional sense, a collective bargaining body into which any person can be a member, provided they are willing to support and adhere to the will of the union. This union would recognize itself before any nation, corporation, or individual. Such a union, supported and globalized, could functionally retaliate against corporations that use inhumane and unsustainable practices. Through the power of boycott, protest, and walkout, any corporation could be brought to its knees within weeks. The courts have no incentive to punish corporations. Their tax dollars pay them. They are not motivated to quickly distribute justice because they are all salaried. It is called nursing, as if from a teat. But that teat is poison, friends. That teat has enslaved us to the 40-hour week, even while throwing us under the bus. It is a system that allows children to be slaves to chocolate, lithium, and sex. It is a system that still puts people underground to find materials we don't really need, we just want them. Most of the things we own we don't need, we want them. Which is fair, considering our entire lives are built on the idea of producing lifetime consumers. The system is built to kill us and make money on every step along the process. But we can kill this system back. We could, if we wanted to, tear down these failed power structures and build new ones, better societies, with better rules and more just enforcement. I wish there was a better format than theater to express my ideas. Virtually any other fine art would be an easier medium to transmit my ideas, and I include dance in that list. I wish I was a better dancer, but all I have are 2 years of theater training in classic and modern dance. What use is that, you ask? Well, someday you might have to waltz. Someday you may have to jazz square your way through some train wreck of a musical. Really, it's more that I wish theater education was better, which is not to say that I have not learned from great minds, but those minds were framed in the parameters of an educational system doomed to failure and collapse. If I had my own theater department, it would necessarily be interdisciplinary, and it would be studied in conjunction with another major that also utilizes a student's talent and focus. So, if you were studying to be a nurse and also a theater artist, it is my belief that studying theater makes you a better nurse. You could engage a curriculum that included and focused on how medicine was represented in theater, Or use the important things learned from working intensely with a partner or group to translate into patient and group relationships. Or, if you're studying to be a police officer, you can learn about the traditions of investigative and forensic technique through active participation in musical murder mystery dinner theater. But if I could have any one interdisciplinary partner with theater, it would be business. I think that college does a great disservice to students by not requiring at least one business class that at the very least explains how to do your taxes, create a budget, and plan for insurance and retirement. Oh, it would be quite the popular class, certainly. But I was forced to take a class that forced us to pay tuition dollars to make up a way to be healthier, journal the process, and submit the end results. I was told, and I believe it, that a student submitted walking to a Chinese restaurant every day as his project. I went to the restaurant. It was not worth walking to. Instead, I did my project on drinking more water. I created a water intake journal. I cited the reasons that drinking water was good for you and how so much of the world either doesn't have access to safe water or doesn't drink enough of it, even if they do. I hated that class and mailed in every hated ounce of attention to it. I got a C, and that stupid grade took away my cum laude. Those fucks. Those fuckers. Those wild assholes that would take such a dumb class mandatory and then not make one mandatory that explains the best way to file your taxes and afford to pay off your massive loans. You know, it didn't used to be a zero-sum game because college wasn't a make-or-break proposition. In theory, you could get a useful degree, find a career in that field, and pay back your loans without having to pay an endless amount of interest. But now there is no margin for error because you are starting your career $30,000 in the hole, at least. You can try to work in parallel to college, but you're going to fail classes because you cannot work and keep up and sleep. So that is going to push your 4-year degree into 5 or 6, and that $30,000 more and more. And then study art. I hope that we can figure out new ways of understanding the world and living inside of it. The way we understand the world and explain it to one another is a construction that has developed at least over hundreds of thousands of years. Civilization as a whole is a geologically infinitesimal blip on our planetary record. It seems long and boring to us out here in the field, but our lives are but hummingbird farts in the wind. Cross-stitch that on a pillow. Society is just an idea we are constantly creating and recreating based on popular ideas. We say that we have authority to be places merely because we can arrive at them. We lay claim to natural resources that were gifts to all people, now turned into profits for a very few. Who owns the land and why they do it is an inconsistent and sprawling milieu of nation-states and neo-monarchies. Sure, Great Britain has a parliament. It also has a royal family and a House of Lords that are in power because they were born into power. Whatever cultural value that may provide, the global habit of paying a small group of people who inherit their wealth is a stupefying consistent. I may be tossing word salad around the problem, but you get it. Kings, really. We are still going with the idea that God, or whatever, bestowed inherited value in a person and or their family. Because where I'm standing, we're all meat. We're all just mobile meat getting scary skeletoned around, you know? And if you're going to come at me with the idea that you're a king, and you were only that because you were born once, well, poops to that, dude face. Poops on that. Say what you will for our failed pirate democracy, at least our fascists have terms. Some of them, anyhow. The others will die soon enough. I was just reading about Harriet Tubman the other day, and apparently for an entire month she prayed that her master would stop trying to sell her and thus take her away from her family. She prayed to God that he turn his heart away from that idea and let her remain with her family. And at the end of that month, when he still sought to sell her, she said she changed her prayer to say, if he cannot be turned away from selling me, then kill him and get him out of my way. And within the week, he was dead. She said she regretted that prayer, but it at least proves a valuable point, that it is easier for God to kill a person than change their heart. That is a unique and beautiful gift, I think. It defies the existence of an all-powerful God to say that no matter what their power, our heart is our own. It is ours and it represents our will, the drumbeat to which we wage our daily wars. Whether Harriet Tubman killed her master with God magic remains to be seen. What I do know is that we should put her on some sort of money. That's the best way to remember her. But no, for reals, we need to end slavery one of these days. I saw a picture of a child hauling a massive burlap sack full of cocoa in an article that explained most chocolate employs slave and child labor to harvest the necessary amount of beans. I love chocolate, but I would never eat it again if we could stop that awful shit from going on. End slave chocolate, please. A lot of my ideas seem pretty crazy and you would never consider investing in them, let alone investing the time it takes for me to explain them to you. But as luck would have it, you are a captive audience, so let me tell you about the solar airship. We're moving away from the term solar dirigible because of the connotations that surround dirigible vis-a-vis the Nazis. But that is my whole goal of creating an airship larger than the Hindenburg, because that's a lot more effective than punching them. Punch a Nazi on TV, okay. Beat a Nazi record, fantastico. But the solar airship is already being theorized and planned, including a proposed manned mission to Venus. NASA created a proposal called Havoc that envisioned a spacecraft that would travel to Venus, then detach a dropship that would dive into the atmosphere of Venus before inflating a solar airship that would keep the craft above the clouds of crushing acid for a month-long mission. Then they would rocket off the airship back to their orbiting ride home, and then they would come back to Earth. NASA has a snappy video of it if you search Havoc NASA. Why, you ask? Well, lots of reasons, I guess. You could stay up there forever, I guess would be the plan, and what I would try to do at least would be to seed the clouds with spores and bacteria that would make the planet habitable. There have been some proposals to inhabit Venus, but currently cloud cities are winning out. Me, I want to poop into those clouds. Turn that acid, basic, and precipitate the atmosphere into delicious, non-melting me water. Oh, that water would have bacteria in it, sure. But I wouldn't care, because I too would have that bacteria. That bacteria and I would be pals. If bacteria wouldn't do it, I bet spores would. Get some tardigrades to move everything around. This all probably sounds crazy, but what is really crazy is thinking you're not going to be mole people living on Mars. I don't want to be in a space helmet forever. I want to know that the long-term function of my efforts is another habitable planet in our solar system. Because too much atmosphere is a much better problem to have than none at all. If I have to be honest with you all, and I must, I think that Elon Musk is creating a long-range plan to kill thousands of rich people. At least, I hope that's his plan. Because he's not doing great with the electric car revolution. We're all still eating petroleum, Dick, to get to and fro. Like plebs. Oh, sure, I'd love a Tesla. How much does that run for? Oh. And how long will it last in sub-zero temperatures? I see. Well, no, I'm not going to pay that. Come to think of it, who are you? Get out of here! Get out while you still can! Good stuff. I think if you put carbon-collecting solar airships into the upper atmosphere, we could undo some pretty significant damage. It would help the transition from fossil fuel-based air travel. Last year, we dumped 859 million tons of CO2 into the atmosphere. You can understand why offsetting 50 tons a day becomes laughable when you consider just how much fucking carbon we need to get places. My solar airship is carbon negative. Travel slower, maybe. My greatest wish is to own a theater of my very own to do weird theater in. It wouldn't have to be huge. I've designed reasonably sized ones, but it is hard, apparently. You need millions of dollars most of the time, consistent audiences, a frothing and churning chaos of producing one of the more difficult art forms on a nightly basis. But mine, and managed by me, not by a committee of wealthy people with loads of free time, not by a faceless corporation trying to make money hand over fist, not by a visionless artistic director who couldn't find inspiration with both hands and fantastic drugs. I've even gone to the trouble of outlining a Pulitzer Shakespeare retrospective rotating non-original season to that end. I wedged in some shameless plugs, to be sure, but it's all about grants. It's about writing a compelling cover letter. It's about doing your level best not to be a complete and total lunatic on paper. Never give them a paper trail, kids. That's free advice that could save your life. Every theater program should have a mandatory grant writing class. Everyone that doesn't is throwing their graduates naked into the streets. Sink or swim. The choice is yours. If I could go back to 1998 with the knowledge of hindsight, I would have made some better educational choices. I would have majored in theater and business, and crucially, I would actually go to all the classes. For anyone considering going back to college, let me tell you how I finally did it after a sprawling 17-year brawl with higher education. I went to class, I read the assignments, I completed and turned in my work and tests. That's it. There is no secret to succeeding in higher education. People will tell you how they take notes, or schedule their days, or frame their study. But that is all unnecessary gilding of a pristine lily. Go to your classes, read/review the assigned materials, complete the work and tests. Repeat. Repeat until you become a doctor. Then the program becomes go teach your classes, assign reading and review materials, assign and grade work and tests. Repeat. We may not need to know thought control, but everyone should get an education. I don't like jumping through the hoops of college, and that is why I failed so often, until I realized once again that I truly do enjoy learning. To be able to learn something new is to expand not only one's knowledge, but their window of possibilities. If you think you've learned everything you need to know, you are wrong. I don't know anything. That's supposed to be the secret password to access infinite wisdom, I guess. The ability to admit that in the grand realm of the universe, what we can know at any given time is virtually fuck all. Pulled back to the distance of total knowledge and mastery, any one person's efforts are meaningless. You cured polio? Haha, no you didn't. You only thought you cured polio, but in reality you just delayed it by a century or so. Anything you can imagine doing is probably going to be contained to what has been accurately called a light blue mote of dust in an infinite canvas of black. Yet here we are, desperate for an intermission that will never come. There will be no intermission. I would be remiss in my job as the star of a one-person show about myself not to mention my work, because you may not be familiar with it. I could be a total stranger to you, and you've somehow pirated this script or footage, and you've somehow committed yourself to make it this far, and you have no clue who Jeremiah Lind is. I feel sorry for you, and let me explain. You see, I was going to spend a whole lot of time explaining myself to you, but if everything works how it's supposed to, I can tell you about my work, and that will explain who I am, in theory. When I first approached theater, I did it as a performer. Theater is tailored to entice performers, who in my experience perform for a myriad of reasons. Maybe it's the not enough money. Maybe it's the total anonymity. Maybe it's the soul-crushing self-loathing. For whatever reason, theater people are often actors. Acting and learning about stagecraft are the tandem skills that guide most theater departments and schools. Beyond a theater program, it's been my experience that relatively few graduates actually perform for a living. Sometimes they do something else entirely. Sell insurance, work a desk job, teach. Whatever they do, I can tell you that they rely on their experience in theater to succeed. The whole of college is attempting a ham-fisted move towards group work, what with the need for every person ever to work with a group of some size. But the whole of college is failing in that effort, because just because you group people doesn't mean you actually teach them to work together. Far from it. The majority of groups I've been a part of are a conglomerate of slacker, jack-off fuck-ups. But I've loved 99% of every theatrical production cast and crew I've been a part of. Oh, there is that 1%, which takes 90% of your tolerance in order to work with, sure. But for the most part, people who do theater do it because they love it, and a sense of shared love tends to guide even the most mediocre of productions to opening night and beyond. The thing is, even a mediocre amateur production should be considered an outstanding success. These are not professionals. These are students or amateurs learning. Going to an amateur production is paying to attend homework. You have to trust in the skill and talent of the educators, professors, and directors to ensure that you are not committing yourself to some nonsense hour-and-a-half one-person show where they don't even have a goddamn intermission. Probably I should have put it on the posters, but who prints posters these days, you know? Why? Why do that? Except to put up in my office somewhere. Wait, that's why. Came around to that answer pretty fast on that one. In terms of my work, I generally consider myself an absurdist postmodernist with hints of futurism and tragic comedy, while also considering myself quite boring. If this all falls apart on the one and only night I do this, then it will be because I don't have the energy to write this stuff down, let alone edit for hours on end. No. Mozart did not edit The Marriage of Figaro. He just farted it out of his brain as a single glorious piece that he wrote down and then idiots performed in it. Those idiots. It occurs to me that I will never be able to remember any of this. Probably. Jesus, how does someone write a one-person show without boring everyone to tears? You have to be pretty on your game to pull something like that off without a prompter or a wig mic or something. Pulling a Brando. Did you know Marlon Brando never bothered to learn his lines? In the early part of his career, all of his lines were put on cue cards around the set. Later, he would get a wig mic, which is a virtually invisible earpiece into which an assistant would feed Brando all of his lines. That's one clever way of weaseling out of memorizing your lines, certainly. Out here in the field, that sort of task has got to be impossible. Just to let you in on the process a little, we are somewhere around page 17 of the total work, and depending on how the timing works out, we're closing in on the end of my ideas section. I think we've covered some really important topics, and I hope you agree. Don't get lazy, though. I'm going to really wow you with these last few ideas, because everything so far has been pretty above the board, and to some people, probably obvious and boring. But there's a lot going on in my mind on a minute-by-minute and day-by-day basis. The problem is never writing, when you can just open the sluice into the mind dump. They call it the flow. I don't seek out the flow. I prefer to think of writing as a constant uphill climb to the top of a volcano into which you are throwing yourself. Hey, let me just take this moment to break whatever fourth wall might be still standing and really thank you for making it this far, you know? No matter what the format you're interacting with this, that is a commitment to keep tabs on whatever the hell is going on for such a long, arduous, boring time. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm picking up on this writing piece within 30-day performance window, and I have no idea what sort of crazy shit I've been rambling about so far. I'll never be able to memorize any of it, but I'm fairly certain I can record it and project it, with the ultimate failure being to read the entire thing completely invisible to the audience in a lead-lined box. In reality, lead is very bad for you. Don't eat it, if you have a choice in the matter. This is the sort of practical advice I hope will carry the bulk of this rambling pile of artsy farts. But I mean, even Victor Hugo went 3 years late on his manuscript for that Hunchback book, I think, is how that all went down, if the internet is to be believed. I guess it has to be at this point. I'm no Mozart, I'll give you that, critics. I am no Thompson, or Emerson, or Lake, or Palmer, or whoever. I am Jeremiah Lin for everything. I am for you, and 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 everyone that you knew, and all they knew, and everyone that they all knew, and everyone who has come before us, and everyone since. We are the all-singing, all-dancing meat of the universe, you and I. Take humanity at our worst, and we are monsters, but at our best and in our hearts, I think there lurks a greater being, something with courage and resolve and righteous fury. This will be my final live performance, such as it is. I can't perform in front of people anymore. It gives me anxiety. I don't have the time. It's not what I want to do. I've done 4 plays in 5 glorious years. It has been the perfect run. And if we keep it going, it will be with the many wonderful performers that populate this area. But performing sucks poops. At best, you get to learn some craft and create some happiness, but also, you can accidentally look like a total jackass. I have done that, sure. What director hasn't? Had a vision of something that wasn't executed, so you're left with something flawed but functional from which to move forward. If I had a theater, we would be open every night, offering free popcorn and water, absurdly expensive candy. It would be a performance center, so there would be a focus on music, theater, dance, but not above including film, particularly as it relates to interdisciplinary media studies. What a wild ride, though, right? My first stage role was as a pornographer. What a weird thing theater is. Macbeth did it. Just say Macbeth as much as you can, kids. That won't come to bite you on your ass over a sprawling, impoverished career in the fine arts. No. Carry on. I don't need to perform on stage anymore. I'm so wildly successful in virtually every other way. It's sad, somewhat, that my most legendary performances are not recorded because of absurd property laws, and probably because they would most likely be on VHS. The kids don't know how to transfer the VHS these days before they demagnetize it with their awful fields. Sally Fields. See, normally you would make a pile of brain salad and then mix it into somewhat cogent parts, and then create several drafts. But I don't think there's time for that nonsense. Not if we want to clear the tight hour and a half. No intermission. Maybe an hour 20. Have we set those parameters yet? Those hopes and dreams? I dream of winning the Pulitzer Prize in drama, but that just involves writing a play and having it produced. It does not mean that you have to perform in it, and in fact, rarely have performing playwrights succeeded, except, of course, the immortal Tyler Perry. Not going to Google that. If the joke lands, it lands. Bury it where it lands. I tried to avoid being morbid for this entire thing, but I think we need to address it. I think we need to do something very real and very unpleasant, and all just feel awful about it. And then we just release it into the universe. As all things, a certain amount of energy can be absorbed, and then we are left to determine where that energy goes. So instead of this rambling, unedited brain salad, I am going to plumb the absolute depths of the awful, horrible, sad things I know. And it is going to be just awful. and we will be awful together, and then we are going to let it go into the universe forever, and it will be okay. We are all going to be okay, shall be our rallying cry. For even the dead are okay, since they could be otherwise eaten by dinosaurs if the tables had been turned on that asteroid. If those dumb fucking lizards had developed a space program. Millions of years down there, eating plants and one another, for what? I worked for Kevin Cease as a mortician's assistant for 6 years. The possibility of working for the Cease family funeral home came up during a production of Mice and Men, in which Cease was Lenny and I was George. Lenny gets shot in the end. Spoiler alert. In the end, rather than risk Lenny going to prison or being lynched by a posse, George does the humane thing and gets Lenny's hopes up about going to live on the rabbit farm of their dreams before shooting him in the back of the head, where the spine meets the brain. For the performance, I used a prop pistol with blanks, and on opening night, it did not go off. I attempted to rack another blank into the chamber, but to no effect. So I left. Rather than do something like yell, "Blammo, dead ski," or pistol whip Lenny, I just exited. Stage off. Lenny followed, of course. That was the night that Lenny got away. Frankly, I liked our version better. Soon after, I would start working for Cease, primarily as a driver delivering the dead. My relationship with death truly began at age 6 with the Challenger disaster. That live television messed me up. A lot of people my age retain vivid memories of our teachers trying to explain what horrifying thing had just happened. I couldn't sleep for a few months. To get myself to sleep at night, my thoughts of death would eventually turn to a solution to end death. I believed, based on the advancements of science and medicine, that eventually we would receive an injection that would make us vaccinated against death. Such an idea has been conceived but not developed. I wish we would get on that. It is the best way to put Cease out of business. I would think of the Challenger often over the course of my life, and the more I learned, the more horrified I was. Experts that have studied the disaster believe that the crew survived the breakup. The disaster is inaccurately called an explosion sometimes. The craft actually experienced catastrophic disintegration. The crew cabin survived the breakup and would have experienced a 3-minute ride on a parabolic arc, unable to control anything before impacting the Pacific Ocean at terminal velocity, being drilled to the floor of the Atlantic at over 3,000 miles per hour. I can imagine more horrible deaths, but it isn't fun. Mortician's assistant is a title that I gave myself, like most titles that exist as a driver for Cease. The hours were flexible, the pay was respectable, and for 6 years I drove bodies thousands of miles. At first, I called myself a freelance body delivery man, but that was problematic for several reasons. It should be the gender neutral freelance body delivery person, for one. It also looks crazy on a resume. It was inaccurate after I was put on the payroll. It was around that time that I began to refer to myself as a mortician's assistant. Whatever the made-up title, the snappy name tag is everything. It makes it more legitimate when the police pull you over with a body and back. Thankfully, I was never pulled over by the police. I drive very safely. What is the incentive to speed when being paid by the hour? I never hit a deer. I had one terrifying flat tire. I was passed by Dale Earnhardt Jr. once. He got lucky. One time I delivered more than one body at a time. I only drove the hearse once, and I hated it. 50% of the vehicle is a blind spot. It's like driving a low-riding pillbox. Every other time, I drove a minivan. In fact, before trying it, I didn't know that I had the ability to move dead people around. The first time I saw a deceased stranger, it was my job to pick up their dead body with the help from a mortician and put it in a zipper gurney before returning to the funeral home. I remember seeing my first dead stranger and feeling reality pull up behind my eyelids, and language turned into a Charlie Brown talking to adults, wah, 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 and then I snapped back to reality. I was asked if I was okay, and I said, yes, I am fine. As a bizarre confession, I will admit that during the drive, I was tempted to take a bite out of the body. A surprising urge, probably prompted by the surreal nature of things. But eating an embalmed corpse is both strictly against the rules and a horrible idea. It was the only time I had that idea, and later I unpacked it, patted it on the head, and sent it back to the subconscious with the rest of the insanity. I don't know how many people I delivered exactly, certainly more than dozens, probably not more than 100. When you're born, someone delivers you, and when you die, you are also delivered. The dead come from Minneapolis-St. Paul, they come from the Fargo airport. They come from hospitals and funeral homes in faraway places, and someone needs to go to those places and bring those dead folks home. Maybe you're lucky enough to die at home. Even then, there are those who will come to you and carry you where you need to go. Much of being human is avoiding thoughts of death. Death has always been a weird subject to me. I've always made up weird stuff to cope with it. Many of you may call me crazy or mistaken, but one night I saw a ghost, and that drastically altered how I see death. I witnessed a phenomenon that cannot be explained by rational understanding of science and reality. No matter if you believe me or not, I believe that there's some sort of afterlife. I don't know if that's a relief to me, but I share it with you in case you were worried. A lot of people claim to know what happens when you die. I have little to no clue, but you can maybe come back as a ghost. Physically, when I die, I'm going to be cremated, and my ashes spread on Lake Bemidji. I want to pollute that water and force people to drink me. If our dog Leroy is dead by that point, we will be spread together. Heck, whoever is dead can come. Big old pile of ashes. We really are just spinning dirt. Compress and spin space dirt over a long enough period of time and you get the house cat. If you take anything away from this, and as a mercy to those you leave behind, write a will, plan your funeral, and get your affairs in order. There's a thing called Swedish death cleaning, but there's also just practically and mercifully unburdening those you leave behind. Don't leave your loved ones without a set of instructions, clear wishes, fond farewells. They're going to have enough to deal with, what with you being dead. As disco. It may be that moving dead people around has permanently altered my understanding and perception of life. For the sake of time and decency, I've left out the unpleasant parts, but there was unpleasantness. Experiences no sane person would walk away from untouched. If that is the price I pay to understand the stakes of the game, to remain somewhat woke, then I pay it gladly. My minivan is full of life now. The universe gives us death, but we have the power to create and nurture life. We have the power even to laugh in the face of death. That's how we win. That is how we find the cure to death. We keep spinning this space dirt into doctors and scientists and caregivers until we defeat it. That is our constant battle, and we are all in it together. I want to share some unpleasantness now. There was a picture that haunted me and haunts me still. It's a black and white picture of a naked Polish woman clutching their babies being herded to ditches to be shot by Nazis. I see that image, and I want to be able to design and build the timecraft to travel back and save them, to be the savior their God failed to be at that moment. Because in a world that was at all just or sane, people wouldn't be able to shoot people and roll them into mass graves. But there are still the images. The gassed children of Syria, the red line that was crossed and ignored. We decide to commit our own war crimes, and from the face-down baby on the Mediterranean, we see a different baby stuffed into a shirt, yearning to breathe free. I would be lying if I told you I was not game theorizing liberating child concentration camps. Because we say never again, or don't look away, or never forget to always remember, but those are just words. Words don't unkill babies. Only actions can do that. Words are the unfortunate victims of fascism. We found the character limit to human attention, and it is now 250 characters. Surely, a capable group of time clones could liberate Auschwitz. Our tent camps aren't Auschwitz, but with hindsight, we can forestall that eventuality. What is the endgame to these destroyed and genocide people? How are we to turn our swords into plowshares before we murder everyone with unsustainable consumption? How can I get a timecraft, a laser gun, and a kill team to vaporize some Nazi scum and halt some crimes against humanity? Can't it be both? Can't we cooperate and collaborate and tear down the edifices of power before they murder us all wholesale to make a few $trillion? If you loan me $1 trillion tomorrow, I would gladly pay you $2 trillion on Tuesday. One other thing you should know about me is my tenacious commitment to getting elected to something. I ran for mayor of Bemidji in 2004 and 2008 and was a registered write-in candidate for governor of Minnesota in the 2018 midterm election. I'm examining the options for 2020. One reason I'm so bad at politics is that I have little to no money. I've accepted probably lifetime less than $300 over those 3 campaigns. It doesn't buy signs, it doesn't buy airtime, it doesn't buy print. These are the things campaigns spend money on to win. Someone once told me that politics was a popularity contest, as if that was supposed to be some grand revelation. Yes, it is quite literally a popularity contest where the wealthiest people get to spend virtually unlimited amounts of their money buying popularity. In the trenches, all we have is crap art and the power of the press release. Throw a news conference on Wednesday and crap on the floor of a McDonald's Thursday, and see what level of traction you will get with either event. Spend all your time getting money to produce snappy videos to be fast-forwarded through on DVRs at home. By all means, do that. What is the point of any of these games in a world where money is speech? I get it, Citizens United. Their argument is awful and destructive and logical. Rich people don't have the time to campaign for their candidates. They're too busy making money. So why can't they spend their money on candidates they support? Otherwise, you were infringing on the rights of those people. Those poor, delicious, rich people. So supple, so digestible. I feel so bad for them, unable to take the time to campaign, let alone disclose their donations to a legal body. No, let's make those unlimited donations secret too. Or people might be discouraged to donate, and who wants that? See First Amendment v. Rich People. So of course, in a world where money is speech, Donald Trump is president. Of course. This is a president only money could buy, and those who threw money at the wild card got their investment back. Oh yes, they got their islands in the sky. Meanwhile, we get mercury fish sandwiches. Eat that, plebs. With politics, as with all things in my life, the true failure is to quit. I watched footage of Hunter S. Thompson after he lost his run for sheriff of Aspen, and he was crushed to the process. He was defeated and decided to focus his energies elsewhere, and threw away all of those sweet experiences into the dirt. I have learned 1,000 times more from my failures as I've ever had from any success. Success is just an intangible word that existentially aligns itself with whatever your intention was in creating or doing a thing. You work as a reporter. Fantastic. Are you successful? Oh, you suck the barrel chrome off a pearl-handled .38 revolver every night while listening to Goodbye Horses and crying yourself to sleep? Well, you shouldn't do that. It's bad for the barrel, especially the muzzle. Next thing is, maybe you should consider doing and or being something/somebody else. Consider that if you are miserable in life, that you are doing it wrong, and that this very moment could be the turning point. I think this is right around our tight hour 20. Let me thank some people. I have a lot of people worthy of thanking, and I will surely miss some with only a page remaining to this work. Because I could not be here to bore you without the love and support of a glorious network of sexy heroes. I want to thank my mother, Donna Lind Nay Stenderson, without whom I would not exist. I was only able to complete these works with the support of my partner in crime, love, and art, Ruth Baker. My plays may never rise to the level of greatness, but our children remain our most fantastic productions. The title of best friend is very divisive because it makes you single out one of many in a very arbitrary and exclusionary selection of a person. So if I had to list my best friends in order of appearance, they would be Zach Holmes, Jesse Whiting, and Andrew Clemens. These men are the finest artists I have ever known and the best friends anyone could ever ask for. Each have contributed, supported, and sacrificed in their own ways to make not only this fine art, but also help me remain a capable, sane, and somewhat functioning member of society. I would deeply and gratefully like to thank the cast and crews of these productions. You don't get to submit for the PP&D without raising a curtain, and that curtain would not rise without you. I would like to thank my stage manager, right hand, and brother, Jared Lind. In the best case scenario, stage managing is a thankless, underpaid, and loathsome position. Our shows are never the best case scenario. Spoiler alert. Bless you all, +1. The author would like to acknowledge the many pop culture references as both dated and boring. Please don't sue me, or at least if you do, wait till I get the $500 trillion robot check. I, being poor, have only my crap plays. I have laid my crap plays beneath your feet. Tread softly/carefully, for you tread on my crap. I would like to thank higher education and the fine arts. Many people of my generation and beyond poo-poo the liberal and fine arts as a useless waste of time and money, but those people probably listen to music at some point in their miserable lives. Maybe even try to dance, however unsuccessfully. Although statistically few attend the theater anymore, those who do must enjoy it, for some dumb reason. The author is grateful to have read those many plays, texts, and articles that supported and advanced the understanding of a wide range of interdisciplinary subjects. Finally, the author would like to again acknowledge that the planet is on fire and dying. For reals, kids, we must start doing something. I used to think we could recycle our way out of this, but the numbers are not looking good. I don't know what it's going to take. I thought maybe if theater was produced more sustainably, but as it turns out, 70% of the carbon emissions on our planet are created by only 100 or so companies. So, and let me clarify, we should not do this ever, wink wink, But someone should maybe just evacuate and then burn those companies to the ground. Extreme, perhaps, but with that sweet insurance money, you could certainly build more sustainable ventures. Recycled solar panel factories, carbon negative hydrocarbon production facilities, hydroponic produce growing centers, really anything but a factory that burns our garbage into the upper atmosphere. Even if it isn't climate change, it could be a meteorite, or a supervolcano, or a doomsday virus. You know. I know you know. I acknowledge you know. Go now, sweet mind slaves. Go tell it on the mountain. The end. Oh, come here, guys. We're already recording.
Hey, stop me! Ah, la, la, la.